Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and as always I'm joined by my co-host Duce.
Hello everyone.
Duce, how are you this fine Saturday evening that we've lulled ourselves into?
I almost dumped the whole rig onto my lap here. I'm good now.
That would be kind of fine. Well, we would have pivoted anyway. We've had other disastrous things happen.
No, I am great. I'm ready to talk about games. It feels like it's been forever since we last recorded. Like so much has gone on in my life.
A lot of games going on, a lot of shenanigans and whatnot. But
like way too much work. All the
adulting stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that we try to get away from by doing stuff like this, like these podcasts and whatnot.
And that is why I've continued to play. Well, we'll get into it, but I've continued to play Stardew just to mellow out.
Get all of that stuff in your sort of Matrix life.
Yeah.
Of sorts. Yeah. Today's episode, for everyone listening, we're going to be covering sort of the, I guess we'll call this like the beat 'em up strike back, where we're talking about the three big beat 'em up games that have made sort of a resurgence of the genre since 2020 with Streets of Rage 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. And if you want to go back to our previous episodes, we talked about, it's basically sort of like a primer to all of this. So way back in episode 27, we covered all the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger games up until like the 16-bit era.
No, actually, we covered then the fighting game. And
that's right, and the fighting game,
that other
the
beat 'em up
2017 one,
no longer available.
That's right, but it's just all under the Mighty Morphin banner.
Yep.
Episode 40, we covered the original NES Ninja Turtle trilogy, and then we also covered the 16-bit games and Tournament Fighters in episode 43.
Those were, classic beat 'em ups.
Classic beat 'em ups, foundational for us. And most recently, we covered the Streets of Rage trilogy, which you should listen to before this in episode 51. So this episode is really fun because this is literally quite literally the next generation of those genres, or excuse me, of those franchises.
Yeah, it's funny we mentioned while we were doing those episodes, like, we compared them to these modern things that just came out recently. We were like, we should do an episode, and then all of a sudden it just sort of all fell together.
It really did. We were just kind of pitching ideas, and we end up covering those franchises together, and we're like, well, why don't we just bundle the new ones up, especially since Rita's Rewind came out in last December, and talk about them.
I'd say these are probably the most recent games we're going to kind of deep dive into.
I think so. I mean, we did one episode where we covered like our pickups and recent games we've been playing, but this is like our most recent deep dive, so to speak, into these three games, or the most recent games like this. Yeah, so it'll be fun. But before we get into that, Ducey, what have you been playing?
Well, like I mentioned, Stardew Valley still going strong. After I was sick, I really got back into that, and then there was just a couple weeks I worked 12 days straight, and
you got a marathon.
All I could do was just veg out on the couch and do something very minimal when it came to games. So I'm already up to like almost the end of year 2 in that. I've got about 75 hours of playtime, maybe a little more now because I haven't checked recently. Could be up to 80. But yeah, every time I think I'm going to find a stopping point, then the next day comes and I'm like, wait, I've got an idea. I could do this next.
Yeah. It's always that sort of bite-sized gamble where it's like, I'm just going to get in this for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is. And then it just has that hook where you're like, okay, it's been 2 hours.
Yeah.
I've watched 3 episodes of a show.
Yeah.
What's happened with my day?
Yep. And when I did finally put that down and I got back into some console games, I don't know what inspired me to do this, but I've just jumped back into Mafia, the definitive edition. Because around September, I put it down. That was my last save file. And I only had about 5 or 6 more missions to go, story levels. And I have to say, though, I found a good place to stop because all of a sudden the game switched on me. Mm-hmm. And it was just so tough to get through to the end. Like, I almost want to take it off of my Game of the Year list last year.
Yeah, that's kind of the issues I had with that game towards the end because I did finish it way back in 2020 or wherever it was. And I enjoyed it for what it was. I enjoyed the time I had with it, but just enough time with it because I think I finished in 11 or 12 hours. And even by then, I was kind of at a point where I was like, all right, this needs to end because the story was fine, but then all the early 2000s jankiness kind of reared its head because it is a remake, but it still felt very rooted in that early 2000s gameplay with some of the stiff movements, stiff animations, and stiff gunplay.
Well, it just didn't really allow for stealth when... Even though the missions seemed to be calling for it, they were like, here, sneak onto this boat and don't get caught. Oh, something happened that you couldn't control. Now you have to fight your way out. There was another one. I had to snipe a politician from this tower. And like the distance I had to snipe him from meant nobody should have known where I was, and they immediately knew where I was. And I'm like, God, now I have to fight through a whole mess of cops just to get out of here. And it was so funny because I did okay in the building itself, but it doesn't stop there. You don't get to just walk out the gates and suddenly you're free. Like, the cops have you surrounded, and I was trying to steal a car and get away, but the cars only go like 20 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. So it turns out I just had to turn and run, and I could sprint away faster. And I found like a dock area that the cops for some reason wouldn't go down into and search. And then I just hung out until luckily the star meter disappeared.
Yeah, that's kind of the point where certain games where it's just, if the systems aren't working, then that's when it becomes just a chore to play at that point, because I'm not playing how I'm sure the developers didn't intend for you to play that way, where it's just go duck out till the monitor goes down.
Just go run.
Yeah, it should be engaging enough and fair enough to where you can deal with the one level and get to your objective instead of just, all right, this is stupid and it's just not working, so I have to wait it out, and the AI is dumb enough to just leave me alone until I can safely escape.
Or at least let me have a level where if there's stealth involved, let me be stealth all the way through and then get away clean. Like, I understand if I trip an alarm or if I catch somebody's attention, okay, that's on me. But don't just automatically have it as like a story point in the level.
Yeah, exactly. What else you been diving into? Is that really the big two, the Mafia and Stardew?
Yeah, Mafia was my first game completed of the year of 2025. But then I randomly found on YouTube, like it was recommended to me, this review of a game called Guns of Fury, and it was right up my alley. I was instantly sold. It's like a mashup of Metal Slug and a Metroidvania.
Yeah, I got this one right away too, because it was a launch price of $15, and then it went down to $13 for like a launch price, like a special launch sale, and it's very much worth that if you like Metroidvanias and Metal Slug, because it is a great marriage of the two different genres, and it works really, really well. There's no leveling up or anything, as far as I could tell, at least. Like, there's no, it's not like you'd experience. Yeah, it kind of works, but it also means that you're less reliant on boosting your stats, because then it's like what weapons you have and unlock or purchase, and also your skill, which is what factors in more than anything, especially with the bosses in this game. Yeah,
I've been surprised how smooth it kind of goes for me, and I do enjoy the weapons and what do you call it? The abilities that you unlock that really open things up. Like, I just recently got double jump, and now I just feel like I can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Even though there are still some dead ends I can't get past.
Yeah.
The bosses, though, they're crazy. They're a little like bullet hell-ish, but I've surprised myself that I've been able to get through them okay with only maybe like one death here or there. So the progression seems pretty okay to me, and I've only gotten lost once, which is a surprise.
I got lost a couple times. I'm currently lost right now. I'm a little bit further in the game than you are, but it's just, you always get in that with Metroidvanias, where it's like you're gonna get to a point where things are flowing fine and you're kind of progressing at a good rate, and then you hit a wall where it's like
literally
where like I've been every part of the map, I'm pretty sure, and then you end up finding something you didn't expect. And I find that with this game too, there's certain instances where like I had to shoot out a floor one time because I didn't realize there was a switch under it, and there was also a stage I realized I couldn't push until I got back to that room. I was like, oh, that's what was stopping for the last like hour and a half.
Yeah, the one I got stuck on was like, I mean, the weapons do an okay job of telling you what they're going to do. It was just my I don't know, what was it? What am I thinking of? Like, I wasn't paying attention to the details. And so I got this weapon that arcs up and over, and there was a switch up above me. And I, for some reason, didn't realize that, this flaming torch thing will be able to push that button.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to kind of get the syntax of the game, as I like to say, where it's like you kind of understand how the game rules work and what it wants you to do. The only nitpick I really have is that sometimes some of the platforms, it's not so clear as to what's part of the background and what's actually something you can jump on.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just there's not enough visual contrast between the darkness of the background and the platforms. But I mean, that's a nitpick. Like, sometimes you have to blindly jump on things like, I can actually stand on this,
And I found that at least it's not cheap like back in the Nintendo days where you don't know what you can jump on, and if you try for it, it's like a death pit or spikes or something. At least in this one, you just sort of fall back down to the level you were on, and you're like, whoops, I couldn't go there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I've been playing quite a bit of this one too, because that's the one that's on the Switch. I'm sure it's on other consoles. I don't really look. I'm sure it's on PC and something else at least.
No, it's been perfect as a little handheld.
Exactly. It's perfect. Like it runs fine enough because it's just 2D. It looks great, and it's been a really good time so far. What I've been playing, I'm always playing a lot and rotating through a lot, but what I got into recently was Star Wars Outlaws. I finally found it cheap because I've been eyeballing this since release. It's an Ubisoft game, so that's why I assume, within like 5-6 months, it usually goes down to like 20-25 bucks. And that's about what I paid for. I found it on GameFly for 25 bucks.
Yeah.
It went down to 23 like 3 days later, so I could save $2. But whatever. But I fully expected to enjoy this game because I don't want to say it like most people because I'm giving some sort of credence to the vocal minority online. It's really just people complaining about stuff. But I tend to enjoy Ubisoft games. It just depends on the game, right? Like that formula's fine where you have a pretty big open world. There's a lot of side activities. There's a lot of distractions, a lot of treasures to pick up. And that's exactly what Star Wars Outlaws is. Like you're playing as sort of this, I guess, what's the word that they call Han Solo?
Like a rogue or a smuggler.
Like a smuggler?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're playing more of as a smuggler, so you don't have the Force with you, so you don't really have Force powers. Like there's a lot of stealth involved, and you kind of have to, you can go into certain areas through multiple pathways, right? Or like, for instance, I was trying to break into this Imperial base to help someone in there, and I had to like scope all around the base, figure out some way to get in there without alluring the stormtroopers out front. And there's a lot of exploration where it's like I ended up finding a place on a mountain where you could walk through and swing on through, and you could kind of like infiltrate the base that way.
Whoa.
To get what you need. But it's been really, really fun so far. Like the story is okay. Like I'm still like in the very beginning where you're kind of establishing yourself as a smuggler, because there's also factions that you can be favorable or disfavorable to, where it's like someone might, based on your decision, you might get a discount in certain areas where certain factions are versus the others where you have a poor reputation.
Yeah, that was kind of the big thing that I heard about when people keep reviewing it is like, oh, you can get in good favor with the Hutts or with the one from the Solo movie that was, oh man, I forgot their name. But yeah, like that interested me most of all was, well, not to mention it's a pretty decently sized open world game.
Well, and the planet you saw me on earlier was just one planet. You can travel to other planets I haven't gone to yet.
Oh, yeah. That's right. You can fly up and out of there.
And there's also space combat. Like I did a little bit of that earlier in the game. Like I had to fly into this, Empire space station or something and go in there. It's really impressive. Like I could, I wouldn't say it's a 10 out of 10 game or anything, right? But it's a solid 8 from what I'm playing, 8.5. Like it looks absolutely incredible. It looks really good. I don't know what engine Ubisoft is using, but it looks and feels like Star Wars, and there's a lot to...
It definitely sounds like it, too.
It definitely sounds like it, yeah. So I've been really enjoying that quite a bit. I'm still into Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. That one's definitely had its hooks in me, more so than most JRPGs, which is fun. The story's just getting more twisty and turning, which I like. Like, there's a lot of things that come to light, and then there's things that are just out of left field. I'm like, oh, crap, like, I wouldn't have expected this twist. Like, you're still... the whole impetus was like you're looking for your mom in Hawaii, and it turns out that there's this whole bigger plan that was set in place for all the events unfolding, and there's also some more twists that involve the Japanese government in the game.
Is that going to lead into that one that's coming out, I think, next month, the Pirates?
The pirate one just released.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's just called Like a Dragon Pirate. I don't know what it is.
It's like Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a weird title.
I don't know if it's spun off from this. I don't know how it's related. I'm not sure, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and frankly, like this Like a Dragon and Yakuza series, I need to play the other Yakuza games, but their humor and like the gameplay is right up my freaking alley. Like Infinite Wealth is so fun because it just has these quality of life touches. Like the game's really zany with side quests and whatnot, but it does things where like if you get into a bigger section of the game, it says like you should be level 36 or something. And if you're under that level, you're like, okay, well I should go grind. So you can actually grind on the open world, or you can go into these dungeons that are specifically randomly laid out. They're just really just like leveling dungeons. And you also get crafting materials through that for your weapons. So there's sort of a bigger benefit to grinding in those, because it's like if you're under leveled, there's been times where I've gone to a boss fight under leveled and like I've just got out with the skin of my teeth. Like I'm like, okay, I can exhale now because I was really close to just dying that whole boss fight. But these leveling dungeons are really great because you can level yourself up, and your classes and they call them jobs in here as well. And you can be more prepared for the bosses, which is what I've been doing. So I've been taking my time with it because there's just so much to do and just so much to enjoy in that game. And the story's been so freaking funny, and just, like I said, it's sort of like a Miami Vice melodrama, but I've been loving the hell out of it so far. So I think I'm near the end of completion of that. I'm at chapter 11 of, I think, 13 or 14 chapters. I'm probably going to see it through, and hopefully I'll get to the pirate one, because I'm sure by the time I finish this and whatever other freaking games I'm playing, the pirate one will be on sale or something. Yeah. But these games have been really fantastic. I've been really impressed with the quality of them. I just need to spend more time with the other games in the series so far.
I heard that they've been putting out ones under the Like a Dragon banner fairly quickly because they reuse a lot of assets, but
that's true.
I mean, that's perfectly fine when you have the story and the humor to back it up.
They do, and like in this game, like you could definitely tell there's reused stuff from the first Like a Dragon game in 2020, like especially in Yokohama, which is like your primary place in Japan, because you jump back between parties in Hawaii and Japan. So like, and there's really like you shouldn't change much of the town. Like it's only been 4 years, so it's not like they have to overhaul Yokohama or anything like that, right? It's just whatever. It's 4 years later, they could just reuse a lot of what they have already.
It's like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2.
Yeah,
like New York stays the same.
Exactly. So it's fine. Like I don't mind assets being reused if the game is that good. So far they've been just top notch quality. And for me, it's just. Some of the humor is just like freaking hilarious. Like I can't repeat some of the stuff that made me laugh on here because it's a little bit vulgar, but it's kind of funny just because it's just Pineapple Express kind of humor, like that Seth Rogen kind of crap say, you know. But it's been a great time. But I guess with that, Ducey, should we get into our beat 'em ups strike back here and talk about the resurgence of one of our favorite genres? All right, Ducey, we're here at our main event talking about the next group of beat-em-ups that spawned off our franchises that we grew up with, really. Like we said, we had a few episodes in the past that covered the Power Ranger games, the early Ninja Turtle games, and most recently the Streets Rage trilogy, which is one of my favorite trilogies in any series, any franchise, any system ever.
Yeah, I realized that this is right up our alley for our show because, you know, a lot of our episodes are about what we grew up on and played together when we were younger. And then there was the period in our lives where we kind of split up and played a lot of stuff separately. And now these are definitely games that we've both played together. Yeah. Even couch co-op wise, like we've played Streets together and Turtles for sure. We haven't done Power Rangers yet, but that would be fun too.
Yeah, well, back then we didn't have the option really because most of the Power Rangers games we played. Oh, I guess the Power Rangers movie was 2-player. We did do that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We did do that one. We just didn't play the Genesis one. Yeah, so the first one we're starting off with is one that is very, very near and dear to my heart. This, to me, is still the beat-em-up of beat-em-ups. It's Streets Rage 4, which originally came out April 30th, 2020 on the Switch, PS4, PC, Xbox. It was basically on all the modern consoles. This was developed by .emu. They were sort of like the primary developer with collaboration with Lizard Cube and Guard Crush Games. .emu, they're pretty notable nowadays. Like they've done a lot of publishing and developing, but they're primarily known for remasters, remakes, and most recently they published the Metal Slug Tactics, which I don't know if you've played that. It's on Game Pass. I played a little bit. It's
on Game Pass?
It is, yeah.
Dang, I didn't even see that yet.
It's pretty fun, but it's a roguelite, so that's kind of turned me off a little bit.
For a tactics game?
Yeah. So the loop is like you get to a point where you get through so many missions, and then you have to restart if you die, and you're permanent upgrades. So it's an enjoyable game. I didn't get too deep into it, but it's a cool idea, you know, Metal Slug and Tactics. We had Metal Slug and Metroidvania earlier with Guns of Fury. And also they're currently developing another game we're both excited about, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which got announced just a couple weeks back.
That's the side-scroller one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which has a similar art style as Streets Rage 4.
Yeah.
So Lizard Cube originally wanted to remaster the original games, but a programmer... one of their main programmers moved to like a personal project, so they kind of nixed that idea, and then they approached Sega to do an entirely new sequel because Streets Rage 3 was last out in 94, 95, so the series hadn't seen anything in 26 years or whatever it's been. It's pretty wild that they finally announced the Streets Rage 4.
It's kind of nice, kind of refreshing because like you look at Double Dragon where the rights kept going everywhere, so everyone was trying to make or remake a game, and it kind of diluted it, and some of them weren't that great. But like when you see the name Streets of Rage, you're like, no, this is probably going to be quality.
Yeah, there's a lineage behind there, and also like beat-em-ups have existed over the last forever, basically.
Yeah, they haven't gone away.
But they haven't gone away. But a lot of them haven't been good. A lot of them. Like I love Double Dragon Neon. Like I think that's a really fun game, but there's a lot of arguments against it, which are fair. Like it's really stiff. It feels like an old game, even though it was released like 2009, where it was. beat 'em ups since then. Like there's one really good one called Fight and Rage. That's one of the more notable ones that was on PC, and I think it's on Switch now. That one's really good. But beat 'em ups by nature, they're like we talked about Streets of Rage, like they're kind of repetitive, just in general, because they're meant to be arcade experiences. And back in the day, we could play them co-op and whatnot, but that was like the size of the game was appropriate for what we were playing, right? Like it was just a condensed 9-10 level beat 'em up. And since then, like beat 'em ups have kind of lost their luster. So Streets Rage 4 for me when they announced it was a huge deal because I had been waiting for Streets Rage 4 for decades. If you remember, Ducey, Fighting Force, that was meant to be Streets Rage 4 way back when.
Oh, that's right. But into the 3D era.
In the 3D era. And
which Fighting Force was a fun game.
It was enjoyable. Like it's not it's not the best beat 'em up either at the time.
Talk about repetitive.
Yeah, it's a repetitive 3D beat 'em up, one of the earlier ones. And to me, when I was a kid, I almost thought that was a Streets Rage 4, and that was before I knew it was intended to be a Streets Rage 4.
I mean, all the main characters you play as were definitely cut from that template.
They were. Like, you had the big bruiser, you had the female lead who's quicker and more agile.
Yeah, the male lead too, who just I don't know. Did he have like a jean vest?
He had it was like
sleeves, and
it was like an opened up button shirt and like a tank top under. Yeah, he just looked like a gritty urban guy, vigilante kind of guy.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, when this was announced, I was very excited for it. I was very much looking forward to it. And then it finally released in April of 2020. This has a lot of heavy hitters on the music. Like the original or the primary composer was, I'm going to probably butcher this. It's a French name, Olivier Derivière. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And also Derivière, something like that. Yeah. Apologize out there, Olivier. So he was the primary composer, and then they brought back Yuzo Koshiro, who was notable for a lot of early games and still is prevalent today in composing. He's one of my favorite composers. They got a lot of great people on here, and just for some background, Olivier actually composed music for Remember Me, which is one of my favorite 360 games. It's that game I was telling you about where you can kind of rewind scenes and reconstruct crime scenes and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
It was really cool. He also did Plague Tale, Innocence, Vampire. That's really immersive sim vampire game from 2017, I think it was. And he also did Dying Light 2, which is one of the more recent games that we've we've kind of talked about like in the last year or so. But this game takes place about 10 years after the death of Mr. X. He was the leader of the Syndicate, as it was called. And in this one, Mr. X, who is his son, and Miss Y, they're like these terror twins who are creating this new syndicate. And then Axel, Blaze...
Isn't he also Mr. Y? I thought they were both Y.
No, they're Mr. X and Y, I think.
Oh, weird.
I think. I could be wrong, though. I didn't play it last night, unfortunately. I was pretty sure they were both Mr. X and Y. Axel's in here again, Blaze, and then Adam Hunter's daughter. He was one of the heroes in the original game. Her name is Cherry. She's in here. And then Dr. Zan from Streets of Rage 3, his apprentice Floyd is in here. And the story in this game is that those four are arrested by the corrupted police, much like the original games. Mm-hmm. And they essentially break out and go through the city until they reach Twins' Island before they defeat them and ultimately arrest them. Ducey, did you play this when it came out? Because I got this launch day and I was instantly...
I think it was on Game Pass from day one, maybe?
It was.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I played it right away on Game Pass, but I realized I didn't get too far in it because I played it again recently on PlayStation. It's on PS Plus. Mm-hmm. And I got to the last level and I definitely don't remember... I think I probably got to the top of the train. Like the moving train.
Oh, yeah.
Which is usually in all beat 'em ups.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember that, and I think we even got to that when we were doing co-op with like Mike or somebody, but that was it. And then some of the further levels after that, I was like, whoa, these are interesting. And it's a weird mix of, it feels long because you're beating up a lot of guys, and then in hindsight, it's kind of a short levels.
Yeah, the levels are pretty brief. There's 12 stages in here. There's a story mode. There's an arcade mode, which arcade mode is very much like an arcade game where it's like you have your lives and that's it. You can gain more by collecting points or beating enemies. And then once you lose all your lives, it's basically game over. I think you can collect continues too. I'm not totally sure. And then there's a boss rush mode where if you want to just rush through every single boss in the game, you can do that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's rough. There's a battle mode, 2-player versus. There's online, which we talked about, which this supports 4-player locally and then only 2 players online, which is unfortunate. But I guess there was issues, at least when this game came out, about syncing 4 players online, which I can kind of understand. I've played this online with a couple of friends, and back at launch, it was kind of spotty. Even on Xbox Live, it was just kind of laggy at times. I know they've patched it since then, but I haven't tried it since then.
Yeah, we haven't. I should have asked you on that help with the last level.
Oh yeah, you could have just texted me and hopped on. Yeah.
But no, I know we had a fun time playing it with like Mike and maybe Randy. Somebody, I think we did a 4-player on that.
Yeah, I thought we did. Maybe it was with Mike's wife or something. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I don't recall. But this game has 21 playable characters. You see, this is why this game is just incredible to me. Yeah, so
I only have like 7 of them.
Yeah, so you unlock more. The idea in this game is that you can earn points through destroy mode, and everything is cumulative. So basically, like your points at the end of each level is tallied up, and it fills up this bigger meter that unlocks more characters and more stuff in the game. So eventually, you unlock pretty much everyone from the entire series. Like you unlock the 16-bit versions of Streets of Rage 1 characters 2 and 3, which
that's hilarious.
I love that because they look amazing here. Like they're pixelated. They look like they're out of the Genesis, but they're definitely sort of HDified, and like you can see the lighting actually highlights the edges of the pixels, so it looks even more awesome.
Oh, weird.
It's really impressive. Like it's definitely a treat if you have an OLED TV or really just on anything. Like on the Switch, it looks amazing too. So for me, the biggest hook of this game is the combat. Like the combat gives you so much freedom and versatility, more so than any beat 'em up I think I've ever played, because you can do, this introduces wall bounces, so you can now bounce your enemies against the walls. It has off the ground attacks where you can bounce them off the ground and continue your combo. I've seen some pretty crazy combo videos on GDQ and just on YouTube in general, people setting up these elaborate setups because the combat's really fluid. You have a lot of movement in the game. Each character has their own special attacks, which is the same format as original games, where it's like you hit the Y button or your top button and you do a special attack, and that takes some of your health. But the really big innovation in this game for me is that you can recover that health if you don't get hit. So you can do as many specials as you want, but as long as you don't get hit, you actually recover health as you damage enemies.
I feel like it's a risk-reward thing, though, because if you do get hit, it's like twice as effective, and it takes off like double your health.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no.
And I think that's why it's so great, because it is a risk and a reward, right? Because the idea is like you can continue a combo or sort of build up your, whatever string you're doing by including a special, which usually bounces enemies or, clears the area. But you have to risk not getting hit by someone who's like swinging a pipe or something to take more of your health away.
Oh, man. Like, I can see how much more intricate the fighting is on this one compared to the other two we'll talk about, or even compared to the Streets of Rages in the past. But my biggest nit to pick is just the lack of speed and no dodging still. It feels like even Streets of Rage 3 had a dash finally and a little bit of a dodge, but this feels like it went back to almost Streets of Rage 1 levels of slow.
Well, I wouldn't say it's that slow. Like Streets of Rage 1 level is probably like 2 maybe. It's not the quickest being up, but it depends on the character you're playing, because Cherry, she has a dash the entire way.
Oh.
Like you can actually double tap and she has like a full-on sprint. Whereas everyone else, it's like, you kind of have to use your blitz move, which is like forward and attack to kind of go forward anyway.
Because I'm still playing as Blaze like I did for the first 3. And like I said, I really enjoy the fluidity of all the beating, all the beatings that I'm giving out. But yeah, I just wish that like after some of the hits, I didn't leave myself open, because I'm just sitting there going, I see the punch coming and I can't move away fast enough.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely happens. I mean, beat 'em ups in a lot of cases will have that, where it's like certain attacks you can't avoid. But for me, I feel like I'm in most control of the game. Or I'm in most instances, I'm in control of this game, where it's like I know how to dodge certain things. Like I know how to manipulate the enemies or group them up together, right? Because you want to technically group them up so you can combo them all together.
Do not get surrounded.
Yeah, because it'll be rough when you get surrounded, because you do have your special attack, which will kind of clear out the general area of you.
I do like the back kick too, if you like push 2 of the buttons and then you do like a back kick to get somebody off of you. But
they've had that since the originals too. That's one of the things that I wish beat 'em ups ripped off, because there's a lot of beat 'em ups that don't have a back attack and you're just like left wide open.
Yep.
So this game does have fantastic music. It has a toggle for modern and retro. The modern music is really freaking good. It fits.
The modern sounds like updated versions of the retro.
Yeah, they do. Like you can definitely tell there's some influences from the original games.
Like Streets of Rage kind of has its own theme song that you don't notice at first until you play all of these.
And then the retro soundtrack is great because it does have a whole mix of the original series, and even has some like Master System and Game Gear versions on there, which to me is a testament to how good Yuzo sure did on those versions, because those are old primitive systems, but they still sound amazing for being, Streets of Rage is pretty complex music, I would say. Like it's just like a a fast nightclub vibe kind of thing. And Master System Game Gear versions sound pretty damn good for their limitations.
I still want to keep my eyes out for a Game Gear version.
Oh yeah, you should definitely get. I mean, you should definitely buy it whenever we see them. But 2 is really good. It's one of my favorite Game Gear games. It's actually a really solid condensed version of that game.
Nice.
I never played 1 though. I imagine that's even more slow than the first game.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. This game also has some retro levels that I think are really cool. I don't know if you unlocked much of these, Deucey, but
I've done like 1 or 2 early on. Was there like 1 per level?
No, there's only 4 or 5, I think,
Okay.
total. I think there's only a handful, and they're in specific levels.
Because
But
every time I find a cop with a taser, I'm like, I should hold on to this.
that's usually the clue.
But then I don't see anything. I'm like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, so certain enemies carry a taser. It's really the police. And you can grab their taser, and then there's these little arcade machines that are you can destroy them, which is just like in the original games too. Like Streets of Rage 2 had that one alleyway where there's a bunch of arcade lines up that says Bare Knuckle, which is the Japanese name. And when you use the taser on these specific arcades, the screen starts to pixelate and it transports you to a boss fight from Streets of Rage 2 with the music and the same 16-bit graphics. It's a really great Easter egg for people like us who grew up with these games. And it's just like that extra level of nostalgia that this game just added to make it even better. Because we haven't talked about the art style in this game too. It's really, really nice. It is one of the more gorgeous 2D games I've ever seen.
Yeah, when you mentioned that they started the idea for this as remasters of the originals, I want a remaster of the original trilogy, but in this art style.
Yeah, that would be incredible. I mean, that's probably what they were intending to do. Like that was probably their original intent, was to make a new Streets of Rage with that same art style, and they just made their own game with it, which I think works better because then they have a little bit more freedom to, to kind of blow things out and express themselves versus just being confined to what was designed in the first 3 games,
This is basically a remaster of those because a lot of the enemies are exactly the same.
They are. Well, I guess it makes sense because they're supposed to be 10 years later, right,
Yeah.
in the story, so it's like it's a new syndicate, it's the same old cronies.
Same city.
Yeah, same city, Yeah, and then I guess we'll get some Metacritic and OpenCritic scores real quick here before we kind of wrap this side up here. So OpenCritic score is 84%. Metacritic is 84 out of 100. Personally, I am very biased, but this game is like a 9.5 out of 10 for me. But nonetheless, those are really solid scores. Like 85 is one of the, a lot of developers wish they could get an 84 on the scale.
I was going to say, I'd probably agree with these more than anything. Like, I do enjoy the fighting, and like I said, all these new moves and everything. It looks cool when you accidentally like bounce somebody off and continue to juggle them. Like I said, I just wish there was a little bit more pep to the step. And
I could see that, yeah.
And for some reason, like the difficulty ramps up only at the very, very end. Like I was telling you last night, I was playing through it. It's the first time I've ever gotten to the last level, and I kind of breezed through it. I didn't get game over at all. You get lives, which I do enjoy more than the original trilogy. Like every new stage, you go back to 2 lives. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I would get down to 0. Like sometimes the bosses take like a couple of tries, but I would always finish the level and move on. I was like, whew, by, like you said, the skin of your teeth. Mm-hmm. Then I get to this last damn level, and I game over twice. Each time I replayed it, I would get less and less far.
Well, that's just frustration setting in at that point.
That was not only frustration, but pain in my hands. Like, this game is going to single-handedly give me carpal tunnel. I don't know what it is. I guess because in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going fast enough. I don't know if I'm hitting hard enough. So I find myself really jamming on either the stick or the D-pad and the hit buttons. I'm just like, maybe if I push square harder, they will hit harder.
Oh my God.
And stop beating me up. And no, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So like I said, when I finally put it down and I ended up like watching something, my hands were literally still in the shape of a controller. And I was like, this is going to take a little while to like come down from.
I'm going to say I'm very glad I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
Maybe because of all the fighting games I play. But the last level is pretty difficult, I will say, because it is kind of a gauntlet, right? That's the whole thing. It's like you're on their island, the Twins' island, and there's just so many enemies in each segment, and you culminate to like this big sort of you fight X and Y together, which for one thing,
Oof.
which is tough.
Yeah.
Which you can manage if you learn their attacks, and then I think it's Mr. X, the son. He ends up in like this mech kind of thing that pokes around. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, like once you learn their patterns, it's not so bad because it is very damaging if you get hit by them. But it definitely you definitely have to spend more time on that level to understand how the patterns are, because it is a gauntlet. Like, I played through this so many times that I can do it just fine on normal and hard.
I was kind of surprised because you fight both of them individually in the previous levels, but I was surprised how they're fairly easy compared to some of the earlier bosses.
They're not bad. Well, I think it's also because you're fighting two of them. Or actually, no, you find them individually at that point.
Yeah.
But then you fight them both and they have similar attacks.
Like when I fought him, he's like right before the last level, he's in that plane cockpit. Super easy. I might have lost maybe a life, but I don't even remember if I did. I was like, what? And at that point, I thought it was the last level because the little level marker on the map, it's the last marker you see. And I'm like, that was the last boss. He was like super easy. And then I was like, oh,
nope.
Here comes more story.
Yeah. One thing I want to touch on before we leave this game is this is really one of my most favorite DLCs in any game ever since DLC has been created, so to speak. It's Mr. X's Nightmare, and this is a survival mode for a beat 'em up, which I don't think has ever really been done before, but this is like the ultimate mode you could add to a beat 'em up because it's just infinitely replayable. The idea here is that this is Dr. Zan. He's made sort of like this virtual reality machine using Mr. X's brain. So it's basically using his memories and whatnot. Yeah. That's like the narrative thread they've connected to this. But the idea is like you go through each floor, like you beat one level, and at the end of each level, you have a random power-up you could add to your arsenal. It's like it might add poison to your attacks. You might get a gold weapon that lasts longer. You can opt to get a health boost. You can get a double jump. There's all kinds of these modifiers that you can add that are randomized. And then the idea is that you go through each level, which transforms because it's a VR thing. So you might get like a level from the main Street Rage 4 game. You might get, a level from Street Rage 3, all awesome. 16-bit and pixelated.
Yes.
And then there's 30 levels. I've only made it to like 29. It gets really freaking hard because there's just so much going on. You fight bosses. And then the idea is that if you die, which you only get one life in this, it's just one sort of big old rush. You actually get experience to level up each character, and you unlock more moves for that character, more specials and more dash attacks.
Do you get like more health or something like that, like to maybe last a little longer?
You can, yeah. You get health power-ups and whatnot.
Awesome, yeah.
So this to me is like the ultimate gameplay loop because I was already loving Street Rage 4 to begin with. Like I was playing through arcade mode, I was playing through story mode over and over to get more characters and level them up through the. I'm not even leveling up in the main game, but just to to learn more of the characters because you can kind of learn combo strings and whatnot. So once they add this DLC, which is like $9, I was like, I'm sold. Like this is like one of the best innovations in beat 'em ups. Just infinite replayability. Have you played this mode yet? I imagine you probably haven't.
Surprisingly, no, but I do have that DLC because it was only like $2.
Oh, that's a steal.
Yeah, and also the main game, like I said, was on PS Plus, so it cost me nothing. I've spent $2 total on this game.
Yeah. It's funny. You had the opposite of what I had because I had the Game Pass version, which sucks because my Game Pass expires.
Yeah.
So I have to buy it on Xbox or whatever because I bought the DLC on Xbox. It was like $9. So you had the same experience I did. Yeah, but Mr. X's Nightmare, it's absolutely worth it if you want even more longevity of this game because this game already has a ton of content in it. Like the training mode, I don't know if you've messed with that either, but it's really robust for a beat 'em up. Like you can set up enemy placements and certain scenarios, like certain hazards. So if you want to practice your combos, you can do that. Like set up the scenarios to set up these specific situations. There's a whole mode where it goes through some of the strategies for each character, like including like what combo setups to use or like how each move works. And also the DLC added a few playable characters. They added Max Thunder, who is the big wrestling guy from Street Rage 2. He's a boss in the main game because he's sort of brainwashed by the twins.
I liked that nod to the original.
I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
He's a big old pain to fight.
He was
but he's great nonetheless.
He was harder than the two twins at the end.
Yeah. They also added Shiva, who was Mr. X's bodyguard back there. He was like the sort of I guess we'll call him like shinobi martial artist kind of guy.
Oh yeah.
He's really fun to play as. Like he's almost like a Street Fighter character in this game.
Again, he was harder than some of the last bosses.
And then they also had Estelle, who's like this female cop in the main game and main story, and she's really fun to use as well. So they added more characters. There's more moves for all the characters. This DLC also added music by T. Lopes. He's more famous for Sonic Mania, like that soundtrack.
Oh, wow.
So he's had his hands in this as well as the next game we'll talk about.
Did the DLC add Adam, or did I unlock him somehow?
He's unlockable, if I recall correctly.
Because when I've restarted the game up, I'm looking at the character selection. I'm like, oh, there's Max, and there's Estelle and stuff, and then I'm like, wait, Adam's in this?
Yep. Yeah, he plays pretty close to his original incarnation. Like,
Can
they
you get
definitely
Rue?
modernize him. Yes, Rue is unlockable as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I
think he was added with the DLC.
Oh, cool. Because I know he was like a little bartender in one of the levels.
Yeah, I thought it was a cool Easter egg.
And then I think you're in like an art museum or something, and he's like an abstract painting in the background.
Yeah, so this game, I mean, through and through was developed with love for the genre and love for the franchise.
For sure.
And to my eyes, like, spoiler, like, this is really my most favorite beat 'em up of all time at this point, because I don't know if there's anything better than this. Even though the next two we'll talk about, particularly the next one, is a huge heavy hitter. To me, this is like 1A and 1B. But the next one, Deucey, we'll get to here is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which, my God, you want to talk about that when that trailer hit, you and I were just like anxiously awaiting for when hell they were going to announce the release. Like, yeah, this is what we've been waiting for. So this was originally released June 16th, 2022. I don't know why I put 2002 on
Hilarious.
there. Yeah, that's a typo on there. It was released in 2022 on the Switch, PS4, PC, and Xbox, and then they made like a PS5 native version later that year, which is where I don't know if it has enhancements or whatnot. But this was developed by Tribute Games. The previous games they've done are Wizorb, which I'm not familiar with. I've heard of it. Ninja Senki DX, which I have played. That was a very old PS Plus game. It's sort of an 8-bit side-scrolling game that is pretty damn hard. But you could definitely see like their 2D roots in that game. Flint Hook, and one game that I forgot if you played this one. Do you see Panzer Paladin on the Switch? That was a really fun time.
I got it shortly after you recommended it. And,
Yeah.
I didn't get too far in it, but it was fun.
It's good. It's difficult.
Very innovative.
Yeah, but it's really, really cool. It's definitely a game that I wish more people played. And the other game that they're most known for is Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game, which is a beat 'em up that it's interesting with this game. Like, this game was really widely loved when it came out, and I didn't play it back then because it got delisted. And I bought it when it was re-released by Limited Run, like they got the publishing rights. I played it. I enjoy it, but I think Scott Pilgrim's a little bit overrated because you want to talk about like damaged sponge enemies. My God, that is what ruined that game for me. It's like every enemy took like 37 hits to kill. So they had history with that game.
Well, yeah. When did that release? That was in the
I want to say it was like
around the time of the movie, or a little after?
No, I want to say it was a little bit after. It felt like it was in one of those Xbox Live Arcade games post.
Yeah,
release.
but it was. I mean, that's my point. It was back then when beat 'em ups were still around, but they didn't know the finesse of them.
They weren't. Yeah, so it's still a fun game for what it is. Like, I think it's only like $15. It's worth it at that point, but. From my perspective, it's just after hearing how great it was, and once I played, I was like, "Oh, this is just fine."
Yeah,
It's an okay beat 'em up. But Shredder's Revenge is the opposite of that. It is just an incredible game all throughout. So Nickelodeon had approached .emu and they would publish this game. So they're related to Streets of Rage 4. .emu had published this game, much like they had developed and published Streets of Rage 4. So Nickelodeon had approached .emu after seeing the Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap remake. That's a remake of Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap from the Master System. I've played that game.
Damn.
It is really gorgeous and excellent looking.
For Master System?
For Master System. And it's interesting because this game is very much rooted in the original, because you can actually toggle the Master System graphics, like updated, or the new like painterly modernized graphics. So it plays largely the same. It's really just like a really gorgeous art style that's laid over the original Master System game. But it's a really good remake, and it was good enough to where Nickelodeon had their attention, was like, oh, we should talk to these guys and approach them about talking about a Ninja Turtles game. Because Tribute had been pitching a Turtles game to Nickelodeon since 2011. So for the last like 10 years, they've been trying to get a new Turtles project going. And Nickelodeon maybe just wasn't ready at the time, and then they finally saw the Wonder Boy game. It was like, oh, maybe we should consider looking into this kind of thing. The music in this game was also composed by T. Lopes, with contributions by John Yatma. This had Mega Ran and Ghostface Killah. Excuse me, I thought it was Streets of Rage. This had Raekwon and Mike Patton from what's that band who made Faith No More? I almost forgot them. How could I forget that? He's the singer for Faith No More and Mr. Bungle. And also, more importantly for us, since we grew up with the animated series, they got the original voice actors for the Turtles, which was really awesome.
This was my favorite part.
It was, because they sound older.
Except for Shredder, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. James Avery.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Turtles in this game, they're enjoying pizza, and they're seeing a newscast, and Bebop interrupts the newscast to announce that the Foot have returned. And they're taking over the Statue of Liberty, so this is very much like Turtles in Time.
This feels like a sequel to Turtles in Time. This should be like Turtles 5.
And it was definitely influenced by that, because this game, they flat out say like it's influenced by Turtles in Time. Like it could be a sequel to that game entirely. So, the story with Turtles, it's just, they see, the Statue of Liberty being taken back. They see that Krang is somehow back. They find out Shredder's still alive. And in the game, you actually go to Dimension X, which is sort of a diversion, because while you're in Dimension X, Shredder and Krang are in our reality, so to speak, and they're using that to like attack the Statue of Liberty, and take over in a very Ghostbusters 2 like fashion.
I was gonna say it turns it into like a giant mech,
the
statue.
So the big thing about this game is that it has 6-player local co-op and online co-op. We've done I think 4-player at least before. I don't know if we've done 6.
5, I think 4 or 5.
Was it 5?
Yeah,
and it gets pretty crazy and chaotic there. But it's a really fun time. There's also a typical arcade mode like Street Rage 4, where you just go as far as you can on one continue essentially. And the story mode has 16 levels on an overworld map, and it looks like the straight out of the arcade game. Like this looks like it could have been released in 1993. For all we know, it's a really gorgeous and realized art style.
It even had like even more references to the original 80s cartoon than a lot of the games back then. A lot of the ones that we've already covered in our previous episodes. Like there are things in there that I totally forgot about, like the punk frogs and some of the bosses. I'm like, I thought, oh, these were either original or they came in the games later. And then like recently on YouTube, they played the first season of the show, and I was like, oh, they're those characters that are in Shredder's Revenge. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize they were way back in the cartoon.
Yeah, the cartoon, I must have missed a lot because there's so many episodes, but there's a lot of connections to this game, to the original cartoon, which is obviously great for people who are aware of it to begin with. And also for us, we're like rediscovering it's like, oh, like they went that far back into the nostalgia tool bag, It's really great. So as mentioned, there's 16 levels. There's 11 playable characters. There's the Turtles, April O'Neil, Casey Jones, Splinter's playable. And DLC added Karai, Usagi, Mona Lisa, and Mondo Gecko. Those last two were, I think, a free update in one of the post.
No,
updates.
it's I actually don't have it, but it's like $3. It was.
Oh, was it a paid DLC?
Yeah, it wasn't as big as the DLC previously.
Yeah, Dimension Shell Shock. Yeah. So I guess we get real quick in Dimension Shell Shock. So this is DLC that they released in August 2023. It added new levels, characters, Usagi and Karai, and of course new color palettes, which are really cool because. Some more than I. There's like stuff like the Game Boy color palettes. There's like the Nintendo color palettes. Mm-hmm. It's really cool they add that because it does make it like a true throwback.
Like this is my favorite DLC when the Streets one was yours. Like I was like, oh, I understand all of these homages that they're paying, and it also brought in the survival mode that Streets started.
Yeah, and it's funny because when this game came out, I was always hoping, I was like, they should really release. If I remember correctly, they had no plans for DLC at the time. Like it was just going to release the game, and perhaps it was something where they underestimated the popularity the game would have and how much it made, which is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, come on, guys.
Yeah, but but they eventually added it around. I was like, this is what should be added again to every beat 'em up, and they added it to this game. I don't like this one as much as Street Rage 4 because I think this one's a lot more difficult and a lot more grindy because you have to go through each of the sort of dimensions. Like they're all sort of themed. I had one. There's Edo, which is like a feudal Japan kind of theme. Mirage, which is like a throwback to the black and white comic.
That's one of my favorites.
That one's really nice.
It looks like the pages of the comic, and you have to like jump between the panels.
Yeah, and there's a pit there. Yeah. There's an 8-bit battleground that looks like the Nintendo games.
Also, one of my favorites.
Really great. Omni Channel 6, which is the news center. Dark Tomorrow and The Void. So there is sort of a story through it where you have to get through, I think it's like 5 or 6 areas, and you fight like Super Shredder at the end.
You have to get enough crystals to open the portal and go to the next one. I've only gotten to this last Shredder once, and he is more of a pain than the final boss, or the final version of him, because it's just like fighting the Super Shredder in the main story mode, but he seems more invincible. He seems to have a lot more iframes, and you just don't know where the window to attack is. I ended up getting there and then almost immediately dying because I was just like, no, I don't know when my chance is.
Yeah, and it's also, because you accrue crystals in between each sort of dimension level, and it's just, you have to get to a point where it's like you collect the next set of crystals, move on to the next one, and it gets progressively harder, but this is really hard.
This, I do enjoy, like, they have sort of a risk reward. They give you 2 options after each thing, and like based on the color, if it's blue or something like that, it's going to be fairly easy in the next round that you go to. If it's red, it's like here's 2 bosses at once or some crazy thing like that, where they sort of give you a power up, but it probably won't do you that much good. I always just keep my fingers crossed for like a pizza to restore my health.
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely a bit of a strategy to it, and it is co-op as well, if that helps a little bit. This game is a real gem. Like I said, this is like sort of 1A and 1B to me. Like Streets of Rage 4 is the top, and this is like right freaking there. And the OpenCritic and Metacritic scores are about the same. It's OpenCritic, it has 86% out of 100, and Metacritic 85. Still feel to me personally it's a little low.
Oh yeah, no,
like,
this is the one where I would rate it like 90s and above.
Yeah, this for me is like minimum 90. Like if I put 9.5 out of 10 for Streets of Rage 4, then this is easily a 9, if not 9.5. But this one, it's a really easy favorite to get into. The combat, it's perfect. It's sort of I guess we'll call it like the perfection of the arcade beat 'em up for Turtles, right? Because Streets of Rage 4 is like, to me, the perfection of like console beat 'em ups, like that generation of console beat 'em ups that were exclusive to consoles. And this really nails everything that made the arcade TMNT games great and refines it and modernizes it, because you have a lot of control. You have a dodge move. There's still cheap hits with some of the bosses and enemies, which I hate, but that's also, again, by nature. That's why I would move it down just a little bit below Streets of Rage, is because I feel like there's more cheap hits with this. Like, there's situations I can get out of Streets of Rage 4 that I can't get out of in here.
I am quite the opposite.
I know you're the opposite.
I'm like, those bosses come at me, I'm like, no, I'm just going to tank the hits.
Yeah.
But in this one, at least I can roll out of the way.
Yeah. At least you have some sort of dodge move, to get out of action, But I mean, it's really just down to preference. Like, this game is still truly amazing. Like, it's one of the best beat 'em ups you could possibly buy right now.
Yeah.
And it's worth every penny. I think it's only like $20-$25, and that's a steal at that point. I think the Dimension Shell Shock DLC is under $8. I think it's about the same price as Streets of Rage. It's under $10.
Yeah, I want to say it's 10, but maybe on sale it's down. And like I said, the last two characters, I think it's so cheap because it's only two characters. They didn't really add too much else. That one I saw for like $3.25 or something.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Like, you're getting so much bang for your buck here, and it's even better if you have co-op friends, whether it's local or online, because this is just pure fun from beginning to end. Like, there's I really don't have any negatives to this game necessarily. It's like, maybe the negative is that it ends.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, I would always love more of this game, because there's a lot of level variety. There's a lot of throwbacks to like even Turtles figures and one, like you said, the turtle blimp in the background on one of the levels.
Yeah.
Right? It's just an absolute joy to play. Like, this is like the ultimate nostalgia trip for us. Anything to add to Ninja Turtles Deuce before we move on to our final game of the hour?
No, just I want to play more of it.
I'm with you. You always get that itch. All right, the last game we're covering on our list here today is the most recent. It's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind, which came out December 10th, 2024, so just a couple months ago as of this recording.
Yeah.
It was released on Switch, PS4, PS5, PC, and Xbox. This was developed and published by Digital Eclipse, and Digital Eclipse, they've had quite a long history. They've been around since like the early 2000s, when they were mostly working on original games and ports. The last 10 years, they've been known for a lot of collections, like the Mega Man Legacy Collection, the Disney Afternoon Collection, the TMNT Cowabunga Collection. They've had their hands.
I've seen their name.
Yeah, they're very, very well known. They're a very good studio, and they've also done these Goldmaster documentary series that are like these interactive games where it's like we mentioned Tetris Forever, where it's like a chronology of the story of Tetris and all the games released. Well, you can also play and interact with certain timelines, or certain points in the timeline. And they've also done the making of Karateka and Llama Soft, the Jeff Minter story. Those are both games I would like to play. But in general, like, they're really good too. Like, they're very, very solid with what they've done. They've done ports, remasters. They've done quite a bit of stuff over the last 20 years.
I feel like the trailer for Power Rangers came out shortly after we did our Power Rangers episode, and we were just as psyched about that as we were about the Turtles.
We were. Absolutely. Like, they revealed this trailer at the 2024 Summer Game Fest, and that was instant. Like, the moment we saw the trailer, the music, was like, oh yeah, can't wait for this. And they mentioned that it was coming out by the end of 2024. And it was really like, I mean, pretty much until like November, I feel like they didn't announce a date. It was very, very late.
Yeah, they didn't say any other news about it until like a couple weeks before it came out.
And I was happy for, like, it's I will admit it's a little bit pricey. I think it was $35 if I remember. It's kind of a pricier beat 'em up. But for my purposes, like, I like supporting these kinds of games because I like them when they're made. So it's like, maybe it's not worth $35. I think out of the three, we can both agree this is probably the weakest of the three for a few reasons. But this game, the story is pretty general. It's Robo Rita in this instance. She goes back in time to team up with her past self, her human self, to sort of terrorize Angel Grove and take care of the Rangers, essentially. And that also plays into the Green Ranger story, like Green with Evil. That whole sort of saga is folded into the story here.
I found this really interesting because this plays off of the anniversary special that was on Netflix last year? No, 2023, I think, where Robo Rita is introduced in that movie, I guess you could call it. And it was just interesting to me that, like, oh, we're going to keep that character and then go back into the past so you're playing, like, the original show. You even go into the juice bar at some parts.
Yeah,
never been in any.
It's like the
games.
intermission.
Yeah.
Teach you to talk with Ernie, I think his name is.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, Ernie and Bulk and Skull over there, which you hear a really funny rendition of their music
Yeah.
when you walk up to them. I thought it was a little nice Easter egg they had on there. This does have five-player local co-op at the beginning, and then you do unlock the Green Ranger after finishing the game. So there's 6-player co-op. It's interesting because this game definitely feels not rushed, but it feels like these ran out of time because I think by promising it was going to come out by 2024, they just released it as it was, and it was, it's a fine game. It definitely had some issues at launch.
Yeah, they missed some parts.
Yeah, so it didn't even.
It's just recently they're getting patches in that like add moves.
Yeah, they're actively improving the game, which is always a good sign because I had nitpicks in the first few days, and then within, I'd say that the following weekends after release, like within the first week, they released a patch that addressed a lot of the issues I had. So initially, like, online, this does have online play, but in the beginning, only the PS1 or PS5 version of PC had online play at launch, and then patches for the Xbox and Switch were released later, which kind of tells you that this was, facing some sort of issues with certification or timing.
Yeah.
that the patch was in after the fact, and then that patch within the first week actually addressed some of the physics, the difficulty, and the UI, which were in dire need. Like, I played through most of the levels. There's only 15 levels in this game, and I played through, I don't know, like 12 or where it was, 10 of them, and you definitely hit a wall of difficulty because this game has a lot of variety with its levels, where some might play like a space harrier game where it's like you're in a Zord scrolling on a plane left to right, and the enemies are coming at you, literally like space harrier, like a belt scrolling shooter,
like a shmup, but like
a
behind
stationary
the back
yes.
shmup.
And it's great for variety, but the difficulty, and for me, it's like I typically don't mind difficult games, but I kind of draw a line where it's just like cheap.
Yeah.
And that's where this was at launch. Like, it was really cheap. Enemies hit hard. You were hit by stuff that you couldn't even really see because there's so much crap coming at you. The combat felt stiff in the sense that you couldn't really combo some of your moves together. It was really disparate moves.
And you were slower.
Yeah, the walk speed was much slower, but that patch in the first week addressed most of that, where now your walk speed is considerably faster. These little time displacement cylinders that come out that you have to destroy that will rewind time if you don't, those have their health reduced because they're really hard to defeat.
Yeah, it usually took me about like 3 explosions and rewinds, and now it only takes me 2.
Yeah. So they're actively working on the game. There are some other variety of levels. Like, there's one where there's like boss fights where you're playing as a Megazord in first person. It turns into like this punch-out Tellero boxer, which I thought was really cool.
That's fun. I got stuck for a little while, though, where like you don't ever lose that battle. You just constantly power down because the goal is you have to get enough of a combo to fill up 3 meters of your power sword.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get hit, you lose the meter if you didn't have it.
You lose a segment there.
Yeah, if you didn't have it totally filled. So, like I said, you don't lose it. Even when you get down to 0 meters on your power sword, you just never really lose. You're sort of in this like state of flux where you're like, I want to leave this game now.
Yeah.
Please knock me out. Oh no, I'm never dying.
Yeah, you kind of at that point you kind of have to like reset yourself and really just kind of look where the attacks are coming from and dodge and hit appropriately. But it's like, I will say, like, this game, I really enjoyed it for the time I had. Like, it's really, just like most people, it's like a couple hours long at most. But some of the bosses are just way too cheap. Like, you fight the, I think his name's like Chicken Foot or something like that bionic chicken kind of boss.
Is he the one with the chicken head in his stomach or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. And like, it's just, it gets to a point in this game where even after the patch, like, there's just too many cheap hits from the boss. Like, they can interrupt your attacks. They can cut right through them. Mm-hmm. They're also damage sponges.
They have a ton of iframe segments.
Yeah, and they have way too much health. And what's even more disappointing is like each ranger has a unique sort of screen clearing attack, which looks awesome each time it happens, but it does almost no damage to the boss. It's like it's really minimal.
It seems very what's the word for it? Like no matter how much of the power has hit the boss, it's always going to take off the same amount of health.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't seem fair. I was trying to time it so that he wouldn't be blocking at all, and then I would hit him, and sure, it connects, but then I'm like, okay, well, that was the predetermined fourth of a life bar.
Yeah. And, it does feel like we're being pretty critical in this game, but I feel like these issues are issues that do get in the way of the enjoyment of the game. Whereas a lot of things with the nitpicks we could have with Turtles and Streets of Rage 4 are pretty minimal because that doesn't get in the way, not including your last boss fight, your last level there.
Yeah.
It doesn't get in the way of the enjoyment of the game as a whole, right? With Power Rangers, it's a lot more expensive than both these other games. And it's a lot harder to get into for that reason, where it's like sometimes it just feels like it's not fair to you in how you're playing.
I do hope they also add like a survival mode to it, because it's an interesting choice to have Green Ranger as the last boss. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert. Because most of the games we talked about in our previous episode, it followed the flow of the series where Green Ranger was somewhere kind of in the middle, and then they used him as an ally for other bosses, and you can do that in the games back then, unlock him and go. This one, you unlock him, and I don't want to play the story mode again with him, because he's still going to be the last boss in that story. It's going to be a weird like mirror thing.
It's a weird like doppelganger kind of gimmick, which kind of works with the show, I guess. Like, it could be
with the time travel aspect.
Yeah,
maybe.
Rita could have teleported someone from another universe, whatever the case is.
But a survival mode would be just as awesome as the other ones. I would say.
I think this would really benefit from it, and the game, it does look gorgeous. Like, I think the sprites look really nice, and like all the Rangers look fantastic. The Zords look fantastic in all those Space Harrier levels.
I will applaud them on their choice of monsters, because there's some of them that you totally forget were in the series. They've never really been mentioned again in other games or anything. So I was like, oh, they're digging into the well for not only the bosses but the little like goodies that you can find that pertain to the show. If you remember the show, you're like, oh, this is a neat Easter egg that I collected.
Yeah, and they do have some souvenirs that you can unlock that are like these hidden treasures in levels that do have Easter eggs for the show. Like, I think you'd find the Green Ranger's candle, if I recall, was one of them, right? And
there was one, when you're fighting like Madame Woe, there's a girl you rescue, and I was like, oh, I remember her from the show. She was like a big character. She had a crush on Billy.
I think is it the teacher you rescue as well?
You rescue the teacher and the principal.
That's right, the principal, yes. And then they show up in the juice bars where you can kind of talk to them after the fact. So this game, again, like,
it has fan service.
Yeah,
for sure.
The thing is, I think this game is at a point where it could be really, really good. It's just, it has some sort of kinks to work out is what it is. And they're working on it. Like, they just released a new patch even as we speak this week, where they add like modifiers for like, one hit kills on enemies. So it's like a really old beat 'em up where one hit and they're dead kind of thing.
Nice.
One hit where you're dead. I think there's some like health boost upgrades or something like that.
They did a thing where you can immediately jump back up if you've been knocked down.
Yeah, which is a big thing was missing, was a lot of defensive options. You really didn't have them. Like, you had a dodge, but instinctually with Streets of Rage 4, like when I get knocked back, I'm just already hitting A to like recover, because you also mitigate your damage. And that's what this game needs a lot too, especially with so many enemies on the screen and some of the cheap hits you get from bosses, because there's times where when I was fighting the Green Ranger, like you're doing the hand-to-hand level, I think it was on the rooftop, there's a point where I couldn't move. Like, I would dodge out of the way and he was there already, attacking me over and over and over. It's like I couldn't, and he was down to like that last bit of health, I was like, I just need 3 hits.
Yeah.
Don't kill me right now.
That was the most ridiculous hand-to-hand fight that I played in this game, because at one point it felt like facing you in Street Fighter. I felt like I should just put the controller down because I was not getting a single punch in.
I agree with you. That almost put me to a limit where, like I said, I was down to his last bit of health. I'm like, this cannot be happening. There's no way I can't get a single hit in right now.
Yeah.
And because he has so much recovery, so he's so quick, he hits so hard and he dashes. So I'm curious if that new recovery move will help and mitigate stuff like that.
I'm not sure if the patch has already been uploaded when I played it, but if it did, it didn't help.
I think, I think the patch was the day after you played, if I recall. Because I had imagined you probably got an update and saying, like, here's the modifier. They call them morphers, which is a great idea.
Oh, yeah.
Where it has, like, the gameplay modifiers. And I forgot what the other changes were. But again, it's like they're actively tweaking this. They did announce the physical version, which I pre-ordered, which is great. That version will have all the updates on it, which is great. So if you do opt for that, you can get a full cart version that has all the updates to date. I think this is a very solid beat 'em up in general. Like, I'm not trying to be overly critical about it. Like, I still enjoy the hell out of it.
I feel like with some of the boss fights, and maybe even some of the level itself, it seems like it was made for multiplayer.
I would agree.
Just one extra co-op.
This really does feel like, especially with the bosses, it feels like it's tuned for multiple players, because some of those bosses, like I said, they're just serious damage sponges, not like in the fun way.
Yeah.
Like when your super attacks don't do much damage and you have limited combo viability, it's like, all right, like this is kind of a grind at this point.
Speaking of limited, another biggest nitpick for me is I played on PlayStation and the constant voice work through the controller.
Oh yeah, I can see
it's
that.
the same line over and over again, like, "Hey, I need help here. Hey, I need help here." And it's like, okay, I get it. I've been punched 3 times in a row. You don't have to say it 3 times in a row.
It's just adding salt to the wound at that point. Yeah. So fantastic game overall. I'd say wait for a sale. Honestly, like, you know, I got this because I love Power Rangers and I love beat 'em ups. I'd say it's a little bit of a tough buy at $35, frankly. Like I'd say, you know, 20 or under is a solid price. Like I would have spent $35 just fine. Oh, I mean, I have spent $35 and more on Streets of Rage 4 and Ninja Turtles because I got the physical versions and whatnot. But this one, it's a little bit of a harder sell. But at the same time, it's obviously up to you and where you do with your money. But I just like to support digital clips and these kinds of games because these kinds of games, you know, the last one we had was that was like a beat 'em up was 2015, right? That last one was 2015ish or even earlier.
Might have been even
2013.
earlier. Yeah,
something like that. It was within the last 10 or 12 years, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of this game, but
and I will say this is an improvement over that one.
Oh, I'm sure it is. It looked like it was an improvement because that one was not so fondly reviewed.
Yeah.
For reviews on this one, let's see. We got OpenCritic. This had 71% and Metacritic 68 out of 100, which I hate to say, but I think that's pretty fair, like for everything you're getting at launch, because you know this is based on the launch version as well, right? Because I don't think they did like a review after the patch or anything like that.
Yeah, I feel like with the patches, I would up that
a little bit at least.
Yeah,
like 75 or something.
Like all 3 of these have seemed too low for.
Yeah, which may be just sort of an indication of how beat 'em ups are perceived as far as mainstream reviews, right?
Yeah.
Because I would argue there's a lot of games that are rated higher than this. I'm like, I don't think so. You know?
No, it's probably a sign of the times. They probably want these beat 'em ups to be like roguelikes or something.
I'm glad these aren't. Like,
yeah.
I think the survival mode is a good sort of alternative to that. But I don't want to say I'm sick of roguelikes. I'm just tired of so many games trying to be a roguelike.
That Turtle ones is actually good.
It is really good, but I'm saying like there's more mediocre to bad roguelikes than there are amazing ones, right?
Yeah.
Like Hades was a standout. The Turtle Splinter Fate, that's a great one. There's a handful of others, but in general, it's like I'm tired of it. You know, like you play and you're like, I'm tired of this. Like, I just want to beat them up.
Yeah.
Know? But yeah, this one is the weakest of the 3, but not by much. I would just say like it's a little bit of a hard sell at the price it's at. Yeah, what more can we say about this one, Deuce? Anything you want to add? Or I guess I know how we ranked them. We kind of talked about how we ranked them. I think it's as they are, right? Or
I might surprise you actually. The more I've thought about it, like I actually say Turtles 1, Power Rangers 2.
Oh, okay. I didn't expect that part.
Hopefully, like they even continue their patchwork because I think it is getting better after launch.
It is. It's definitely improving for sure.
And for me, it is just all of the fan service about it. Like Streets of Rage, I didn't really grow up with the original trilogy, but I do know that they are paying great homage to the originals with that one. I'm just like, my thumbs hurt, man. Power Rangers doesn't hurt my thumbs as much as Streets does.
Yeah, from my rank, if it wasn't obvious, it would be Streets Rage 4 is number 1, and then only because we have to have a number 2 and not like 1B.
Yeah.
It's Turtles, Shred's Revenge, because those two, you cannot, from my money, you cannot get better beat 'em ups than those two right now. I don't think there's anything that comes close. People will argue Fight and Rage is good, which it's good. It's not Turtles, Shred's Revenge, or Streets Rage 4. And then third would be Rita's Rewind, just because it just has, at least right now, there's a lot of issues, and then I think there's, even with multiple patches and updates, I don't think it'll come close to how good Streets Rage 4 and Turtles feels. Like it's just, I think it's just designed differently, right? It's not a detriment or anything. It's not a bad thing. It's just for what they have as a foundation versus the foundation for the other 2 games. I think Rita's Rewind, it's fine at 3, but it's not a bad game. It's just,
it would be kind of funny if they did a survival, but then they also incorporated the shmup levels too.
I would think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I would love for that actually. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think they've ruled out DLC. I know again, it seems like it's a really small team because they're making updates, and you know, it's not that slow. Like they've had at least 2 or 3 updates in the last 2 months. So it's probably just they have so many things prioritized. Like DLC is something they can't focus on. They're probably trying to get the game to a state that they feel is fine. Right?
I was going to say make it work first.
Exactly. like make sure everything's patched up the way you want it, and then maybe work on DLC, because I do feel like with these issues, like with the difficulty and the damage sponge, like a survival mode would be kind of annoying to play.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine fighting the Green Ranger in survival mode. It's like, oh, cool, level 2, I'm dead already. You know?
Yep.
I have to go back to the beginning. It's just like story mode or whatever, you know? All right, so well, I guess that about does it for our Beat 'em Ups Strike Back episode. So if you feel like we missed something or you have any opinions on any of these 3 games, you can reach us by email at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast, where we post all kinds of screens of our collection of trailers, videos, all kinds of cool stuff. Anything else you want to add to this one, Ducey?
Just cowabunga, dudes. It's morphin' time on the streets of rage.